Hey, this is Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity to Podcast.com. I'm here to answer your podcasting questions. I do this live on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern over at the Audacity to Podcast.com/live. I've got a couple questions already lined up to answer for you. What's my opinion on the differences between the RE20 and RE320, two different podcasting microphones? And also, what is a good iPad app for editing audio? So, if that interests you, stick around. And if you are watching this live, then feel free to ask any additional podcasting questions in the comments below this video, and I'll try to get to those in the time that I have here with you. Now, if you are interested in improving your podcast, you've already launched, you're already past episode 1, you're already in iTunes and that kind of thing, then the thing that you need to check out is podcastersociety.com. Join the waiting list over there, and you'll be the first one to be notified when it's open for new members. And you'll also get some behind-the-scenes sneak peeks at what is going on in the renovations for Podcaster Society. So Podcaster Society is all about helping you by equipping you, training you, providing resources for you, and other things to help you improve and grow your podcast. Whether you're trying to monetize your podcast or your podcast is a hobby and you simply want to get better at it. I think we could all do with improving our podcast, as well as I think we all want a bigger audience. Maybe we'd like to cover some expenses. Maybe you want to monetize, maybe you don't. Podcaster Society is for you either way. This will not teach you how to podcast. So if you're thinking, I don't know how to podcast, I want to learn, this isn't for you. This is for you if you have already launched your podcast. So go to podcasterssociety.com to join the waiting list, or maybe by the time you're watching this video, registration is already open for Podcaster Society, in which case I'd love to have you just jump in and join us over there. podcasterssociety.com. Now, to the questions. Mike Moody asked, besides price, what's your opinion on the differences between the Electro Voice RE20 and the Electro Voice RE320? These are both really good microphones, and thank you for the podcasting question, Mike. Both of these are good microphones. I've done a review before of both of them, and if you go to theaudacitytopodcast.com/RE20 or theaudacitytopodcast.com/RE320, then you'll see my reviews of the microphones over there. In general, I think you can't go wrong with either of these microphones. They're really good. They're really natural sounding. Now, in my video response or my video review, I initially said that I thought the RE20 sounded better and was a more natural sounding microphone. I've since changed my opinion on that after using different microphones more, and you may even recognize that this black microphone I'm using is an Electro Voice RE320. Full disclosure, I did not pay for this microphone. This was given to me after a relationship and reputation and authority and trust and influence was built between me and Electro Voice. So they wanted me to be using one of their microphones when they heard that I already wanted to switch from my Heil PR40 to an Electro Voice RE320. So they said, well, here, how about we make this easier and you just take one of these microphones and start podcasting with it instead, which I love, and I'm very grateful for this microphone. So thank you, Electro Voice, for that. The reason I like this microphone and recommend the RE320 over anything else, and this is price aside. Now, you are probably thinking price. Retail price on the RE320 is $299. Retail price on the RE20 is $449. So it's a $150 difference. Now, right now, the RE320 you can get for as low as, I've seen it as low as $250 in different places, different sales, depending on your account. Like, here's a little tip. If you have an Amazon business account, there's a discount on the RE320 exclusive to business users. And I have links to that on the website. If you watch those reviews, you can use my affiliate links for that if you're interested. So price difference aside, what I like and dislike about these two microphones, well, the RE20 has a very smooth sound to it. If you have a harsh voice, a very shrill voice, a high-pitched voice, anything like that, piercing in any way, I think the RE20 might be a little bit better. because it does reduce some of those high range frequencies a little bit more and smooths it out. It doesn't give the bass boost an extra presence like the PR40 does, and I think the PR40 is good for even fewer voices than the RE20. But keep in mind, all of these frequency differences are things you can make up for, either directly on your mixing board if you have equalization controls, the high, the mid, the low, and that kind of thing, or you can make up for it in software. But if you don't want to mess with any kind of tweaking or processing afterward, then maybe you do this all just right from your equipment so that you don't have to do the extra step afterward. So the RE20, bit smoother, whereas the RE320, I would say, is more clear and more natural sounding. The way that my voice sounds to you through the RE320 is a lot more natural sounding than through the RE20 or the Pyle PR40. And that's according to different people who have listened to it. And I've asked them which one sounds the most normal, which one sounds best for my voice. And most of the time, they've voted for the RE320. In blind audio tests, they voted for the RE320 as sounding the best and the most natural to my actual voice, for those who have talked to me face to face and know what my actual voice sounds like. And they also said, just for my voice overall, the 320 sounds better. And in most other voices I've heard using the 320 versus other microphones, I've also preferred the 320 because it's very natural sounding. And that is as long as you have the little switch that's on it flipped over to the flat setting. If you switch it to the kick drum mode, then this is the sound that you get. It's a little bit different, maybe not all that perceivable, especially through live streaming like this, but it is a tiny bit different, and this could actually sound a little bit more like the RE20 than the 320. And now here I am back on the flat frequency response mode. So there's some EQ difference between the two microphones. One sounds more clear. I think that's the RE320 sounds more clear than the RE320. Not sure if that's what I said, but the RE320, I think, sounds more clear than the RE20. The other difference, and this may not seem all that important until you look at what other gear you have. The RE320 is more sensitive because it has in-dim microphones inside, or magnets in it, ND magnets in it. So that makes it a little bit more sensitive in the way it picks up sound. Whereas the RE20 is quite quiet. It's more quiet. It needs more gain than the Pyle PR40. It doesn't need quite as much gain as the Shure SM7B, which is a nice microphone, but boy, is it gain hungry. So why that matters is a couple things. If you are working with cheaper audio equipment, with cheaper preamps, the preamps are what take the signal from the microphone and amplify it before it then goes through the rest of your equipment. It sends a certain amount of voltage to the microphone, which increases basically the microphone's sensitivity. There is a point at which adding too much voltage does actually add a little bit of interference. It's not... I can't really say it comes down to a specific mathematical formula, but it's as you increase more voltage, there does come some point somewhere, and it's different for different preamps, where increasing voltage will introduce more noise or distortion instead of raising the volume later, either in the mixer fader settings or in your software. But that aside, the reason why the sensitivity is important is if your microphone requires a whole lot of gain, then you're depending on your preamp a lot more. And the preamp could potentially introduce a lot more hiss into your recording if it's not a high enough quality preamp and if it doesn't provide enough clean gain to it. For example, I have a Zoom H4n digital audio recorder. It's what records my audio from my mixer and it goes into the H4n. It works fine for that. But if I plug a microphone directly into the H4n, then the result is there's a lot of background hiss and noise in the recording, and that seems to be not seems to be, that is the result of the lower quality preamp. So I have to really bump it up in order for it to pick up my microphone. But with each little incrementation or increase in the volume level, I'm also increasing the amount of hiss that's in the recording. So if I have a microphone that's more sensitive, then I don't have to use the preamp gain as much. So if I don't have to increase the gain as much, then that also means I'm not introducing the possibility for as much hiss in the audio. So the more sensitive a microphone is, the potential for less hiss that you have. Now, if you have a really good preamp, then it may not make a difference. Like if you're using a cloud lifter, a Fethead, a Scarlett device, a DBX 286 or something like that, then it's really not going to make much of a difference because the preamps in those are really good quality. Even the newer Zoom recorders like the Zoom H5, H6, H4n Pro, and similar devices from other companies do provide pretty good, clean amplification for the audio. But mixers, for most of us using pro audio equipment, we're plugging our microphones into a mixer. That's where the difference may be more noticeable. May be more noticeable. So for myself, Scott's asking what preamp I use. Scott Smith in the chat right now. I use the preamp that's built into my Behringer X1832 USB mixer. And that preamp is adequate for the Electro Voice RE320. It's not adequate for the Shure SM7B. When I plugged in a Shure SM7B, I had to add so much gain that then the hiss from the preamp started being introduced into the recording. So the RE320 means that you can get away with potentially a cheaper preamp than you might normally have. Scott Smith says, my opinion, RE320 is brighter and needs less gain. RE20 is warmer, but is a gain hog. Both are really good. Total true statement there. Next question. So to sum that up, it's really up to you. The main thing is don't obsess over the microphone. There are plenty of different microphones that you could get. And the most important thing is just get something that works for you. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to try a whole bunch of microphones. Get what you can afford. Get what sounds reasonably good. And someday, if you have extra money to spend, you could consider upgrading your microphone. But there are many other things that you could spend your money on that might even be better investments than upgrading your microphone, which is already doing the job for you. It's kind of like if you have a 40-inch TV, how likely or how much do you really need to upgrade to a 46-inch TV? It's not that much of an upgrade, so it might not be worth it unless you happen to have extra cash lying around that you could use for that upgrade. So thank you, Mike, for that question. I see Mike is in the chat right now. Andrew Hall asked this question. He said, is there a good iPad app for editing audio? Yes, there are a few. And in fact, if you go back to the Audacity to Podcast episode 210, so an easy link for that would be theaudacitytopodcast.com/210. That episode was all about how to use a tablet with podcasting, whether you're on iOS or Android. So Andrew is asking specifically about an iOS app for editing audio on an iPad. And the apps that I recommend for that would be, you could look at the recording apps. Some of the recording apps do have some basic editing abilities within them, like Rode Rec, or that's one of the good standard ones. There's also, it's an iPhone app, really. But really good mobile apps for editing audio. GarageBand comes with iOS. It's pretty good, sort of. But if you really want an effective editor, look at this app called Multitrack DAW. And I have a link to that in the notes for episode 210 if you want to look at it. It's $10 currently, up to version 4.3. but it is a multi-track editor designed for touch. I would say this is the closest it comes to a good multi-track editor on an iPad. If you're interested in an Android app, I'm not really sure of an Android app, but I'm sure there are some out there that you could check out. And this would allow you to do those basic edits on your iPad. Now, you might not get the super precision that you could get with a mouse, but they do design these things really nicely so that you can have more precise control of your different signals and such. Now, if you're using any kind of special recording device to connect to your iPad, it may include some kind of license for the software. That it could be some other software or something that's designed specifically for that device to record in multi-track or record in high quality or anything like that. So definitely look at what may already be provided. You have GarageBand on your iPad, that could maybe work for you. If not, check out multi-track DAW, that's DAW, and that could probably be exactly what you need. $10, and they do offer some paid in-app upgrades for if you need to be able to have more stereo tracks. It looks like by itself, the $10 version gives you 8 audio tracks, and you can upgrade to add 8 more or upgrade to add 16 more audio tracks. So you can have a grand total of 24 audio tracks if you needed that many in your multi-track editor. So that's the direction to go for that. If you have other questions that you'd like me to answer about podcasting, then the best way to do that is email them to me, feedback@theaudacitytopodcast.com. And then from that, I'll decide whether it's something that I'll cover here in a live podcasting Q&A session on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/live. Or I might decide to make an episode about it. Like the next episode of the Audacity to Podcast covers what I think is the most popular question I've ever received. And when I started looking at the different pieces of feedback I've received just in the last couple weeks, I realized, wow, I've never answered this question. I've kind of addressed the question in different aspects, but I've never answered it directly. So the next episode of the Audacity to Podcast, which will publish on Tuesday, May 9th, 2017, will be how to get good audio from your podcast guests, not your co-hosts, because co-hosts, I think, are a completely different thing. You can work with co-hosts. You can send them a microphone. You can have a higher standard for certain audio quality, regular co-hosts who appear episode after episode. There are certain standards that I think they should follow. And so your workflow could be completely different with them. Working with guests to get their audio the best is a different matter because you need to make certain compromises. You need to focus on what's most important with that guest. And you need to recognize that certain things may not be an option for them. And guests come from all aspects of technology, experience, and equipment and internet bandwidth and all kinds of things like that. So the next episode of the Audacity Podcast, number 304, will be about how to get good audio from your podcast guests. Watch for that at theaudacitytopodcast.com. Subscribe to the audio podcast over there and join me on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern for when I do these live podcasting Q&As over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/live. That will always take you to the latest video post over there. That's the newest live event, especially if you visit it close to that 2 p.m. Eastern time. Scott Orr in the chat said, is the typical listener going to know the difference between the RE320 and, say, the Pyle SM58 knockoff? Usually, no, they won't. Not straight up. So if you use 2 different microphones within the same episode, so your voice is back to back with different microphones, yes, they may notice a difference. But if you have audio that's really good, that's at that, we could say 75% or 80% quality level, and you have a different microphone that's maybe 90% or 95% quality level, audiophiles may notice the difference. But because most people are consuming podcasts in less than ideal audio environments, they may not notice the difference because people are listening while they are driving, while they're mowing the yard, while they're doing chores, while they're doing dishes, while they're working, while they're doing these other things. And often they're listening through maybe cheap earbuds like Apple EarPods or basic headphones or something like that. They're probably not listening in an acoustically treated environment with big headphones that help them hear every single frequency. Yes, some people do that, but most people don't. So the subtle differences in your voice that these microphones pick up probably won't be noticeable to your audience if they didn't know you were using different microphones. So if you start off your podcast and you sound good, don't worry about upgrading to what's a little bit better. Like the ATR 2100 USB microphone. It's not the best microphone. I can usually recognize it too. It tends to be a little bit more muffled than other microphones, but it's very good and it gets the job done. It's certainly much better than trying to use your internal microphone on your computer, or it's better even than trying to use the microphone built into your mobile device, although the microphone on your mobile device is pretty good. It's certainly better than using the headset microphone that you might have on some kind of earbuds or Bluetooth headset or anything like that. It's better than that, a lot better than those things. But if you have an ATR 2100 USB, which you paid maybe $35 for it, maybe you paid $75 for it, price doesn't really matter here. If you have that, is it really worth it to upgrade to an RE320? Maybe not. There are a lot of myths about microphones out there. One of the big myths is that certain microphones block or pick up, block background noise better than others. That's not the case. See, microphones don't distinguish in distance. Audio is different at distances. So when I'm here about 4 to 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimeters away from the microphone, it's able to pick up my voice much more clear than the background because the difference between my voice and the background noise are much greater. The farther away I move from the microphone, the more I have to turn up the gain in order to capture the same volume level of my voice. And by turning up the gain, that means not by turning up the gain. Because my voice is now quieter and needs makeup gain, it means everything else is being lifted up with it. So it's introducing a lot of other noise. All that to say, the microphone, the main difference in microphones, really, even with condenser microphones, and condenser microphones are not a horrible sin. There are certain things to consider, but it's actually a myth that condenser microphones pick up background noise better than other microphones. The big thing that makes a difference, and this is what might be worth upgrading or switching microphones for, is the pickup pattern for the microphone. Most dynamic studio microphones and some condenser microphones are a cardioid pickup pattern. That is, imagine an upside down heart stuck onto the end of your microphone. That's kind of the pickup pattern, or maybe a strawberry would be a better illustration. It's kind of the pickup pattern for these microphones. So with the RE320, for example, I'm facing it directly now. It picks up most right in front of the microphone, and that amount that it picks up goes down as the audio goes around the microphone. So as I'm talking right here into the microphone, where the microphone is pointed directly at my voice, and then as I start to pivot around the microphone, which I'll do in just a moment, you'll hear my voice even less. So here I go now, pivoting around the microphone. I'm now talking into the side of the microphone. I'm still about the same distance from the microphone, but you hear my voice a whole lot less than you did right here. And with my compressor limiter gate, you might not have even heard my voice all that much on its own. Condenser microphones are often, not always, but often omnidirectional. So it means they're capturing sound from all directions. That's a case where it may really be worth it to upgrade from whatever you're using. Because Omni, a way to look at it is that Omni is picking up sound from directions other than where your voice is. Good cases for Omni are lavalier microphones because with a lavalier microphone, it's mounted to my clothing and my head might turn in different directions or orientations to that microphone that's mounted to my clothing. So there, omnidirectional is really important for capturing my voice. So it doesn't really matter if my voice is over here, or if it's over here, or if it's right centered. Cardioid is better than at, I'm not going to say filtering background noise, but at capturing a smaller cone of audio. So then that reduces the chances of capturing background noise because it captures more of what it's pointed to. So if I point the microphone in the direction of background noise, it's going to pick up that background noise. If I point it away from the background noise, it won't pick up that background noise or won't pick it up as much. A really good illustration of the consequences of using the wrong setting is the Blue Yeti microphone. The Yeti is extremely popular. It's actually, I would say it's too popular. It's an ugly microphone. It's big, it's bulky. If you get just the Yeti, not the Yeti Pro, then you're locked into USB and you can't connect it with professional audio equipment. So if you ever upgrade your gear, you'll never be able to take your microphone with you. It's expensive. You can get same quality for less cost. It's big. You have to put it on your desk or buy other expensive mounting gear. So it's not the best. But if you have one, then you may be familiar with the mode switch. And this is the thing about another thing about the microphone I strongly dislike is it's highly susceptible to user error. I'm not sure where most people have the mode switch set when they receive the microphone, but you can change that microphone's pickup pattern. It can be mid-side, like a dual channel sort of thing where it's picking up front and back, but not the sides around it. It can be omnidirectional. It can be cardioid. And I was on a podcast once where the lady was interviewing me. She had a Yeti, and it didn't sound right. It sounded like she was 5 feet away from the microphone. But I told her, make sure you're close to the microphone and that. And we still did the interview. But then at the end of the interview, I thought, she probably has the mode switch in the wrong place. So I told her, switch that thing to what looks kind of like the upside down heart, switch it to cardioid pattern. And her audio was tremendously better because it was no longer picking up the other sound. So even if you're the only one in the room, you're the only thing making noise in your room, you still want a cardioid microphone because unless your room is really nicely treated for acoustics, your voice is bouncing off all kinds of places, every surface and everything. It's even bouncing off your computer screen in front of you. So with your voice bouncing off of other things, it's creating reverb. So if your microphone picks up audio from all of these other directions, it's picking up from these other directions, it's picking up pure reverb. My voice is here, reverb is around here. Now, if it's cardioid, then it's picking up primarily what's right in front of it, not so much all the reverb that's going around it. So the audio quality will be significantly different. So if you're using an omnidirectional microphone, that's a case to upgrade. And the listener will notice a difference between a misused omnidirectional microphone and a properly used dynamic microphone. One other thing about misusing, if you have a Yeti microphone, make sure you're talking into the front of it, not the top of it. Dynamic microphones are usually end-fire microphones where you talk into the end. Condenser microphones, you usually talk into the side, a particular side, probably. So if you're interested more in learning how to improve your podcast, go to podcasterssociety.com. I'm going to refresh the comments one more time and see what other questions there are. Scott Smith said about my episode about recording co-hosts. He said, I can't wait to hear that episode. So many of our guests use their computer's internal speakers and microphone. Yikes. Yeah, my episode addresses that. Billy Hoffman said, I'm 40 episodes in, 10,000 downloads per week at this point. Seems to me like I'm doing good, but don't know who to compare myself to others or if I should. Short question, Billy. No, you shouldn't. that's the cool thing with podcasts, and also the frustrating thing is every podcast has its own audience. And the downloads per time period, I address this, I think, almost in every one of these live discussions. Ignore downloads per time period. Downloads per day, downloads per week, downloads per month. It's a meaningless metric because it's influenced more by other things. For example, for just a simple example here, regardless of how many episodes you release in a week, those 10,000 downloads may account for a lot of older episodes because people may be subscribing, downloading older episodes. They may be finding older episodes through SEO and such. So you can't assume those 10,000 downloads are only for your latest episode or people. It's not even necessarily people. Here's the other reason. Frequency significantly affects this. So if you say you have 10,000 downloads per week, that might seem impressive unless you say, I release 10 episodes in a week. Then it's not so impressive because those 10,000 downloads are spread across all of those episodes you release in a week and all of the episodes you've ever released in the past, more heavily on the more recent episodes. The better metric to use would be downloads per episode after about 30 days. So look at your stats from 1 month ago for a single episode. Look at that number, kind of memorize it, write it down, get a general idea of what it is, that kind of thing. Then in another week, look at your next weekly episode to see what are its downloads. Again, an episode that's a month old, and look at its numbers and compare that to the number that you previously got from your last episode, not that straight number, because there can still be some residual downloading happening later that continues to increase the per episode downloads. So if you see that your per episode downloads after a month are around a certain number, that gives you an idea of how many people you have listening. So it's not this downloads per month or downloads per week. You have an actual number of approximately this many people downloaded this episode. And according to Edison research, most people tend to listen to all or most of what they download. So you don't have to worry about your podcast sitting somewhere collecting dust. Scott Smith said, I just started using a condenser microphone, the MLX Genesis tube. Not that much problem with background noise, and I think it sounds really good. I do have a treatment room. Now the MLX Genesis tube, I'm going to look up that microphone really quickly. But this is a good example of condenser microphone that could work. I see the Genesis HE edition tube. So let's assume your microphone is kind of similar to this. It is a cardioid pickup pattern. So that's the thing that's most important. Now, what condenser microphones do is because of the way they pick up audio, they pick up more frequencies than dynamic microphones. So in a sense, there's the potential to pick up more background noise if that background noise is in certain frequencies, like air conditioners or fans, that kind of thing, high frequency noise. Condenser microphones pick that up more than dynamic microphones. What's also in those high frequencies is the clarity of your voice. So condenser microphones will sometimes produce much more clear results in a more broad range of frequencies. But by capturing more frequencies, it means that some of that noise that's in only particular frequency ranges could also be picked up. But it's not like if there's a voice in that corner back there, a condenser microphone will pick up that voice pretty much the same amount as a dynamic microphone would. So it's not that it filters background noise more or less than something else. I'll refresh the post one more time to see if any other questions or comments have come in. I'm still working around with Facebook in the way that they do comments. There doesn't always seem to be a reliable way to see the latest comments here. Matt Bierman said, the Audacity podcast episode 301 was phenomenal. Thanks for releasing it. You're welcome, Matt. 301 was where I told my story of 10 years of podcasting and the incredible journey. For me, I consider it incredible how, and I'm going to be Christian here. I'm always Christian, but how God used podcasting to change my life and even save my life. Because I was in a period of some super deep deep depression. And I actually didn't mention this in the podcast episode, but during that depression, I was suicidal. I said something to someone about how I felt like I had no more reason to live, which suddenly caused other people to panic. And I can remember just for a year, this went on, this deep depression. Every oncoming truck on the highway, I would just beg for it to veer off and run into my car and take my life. It was that bad for me. I didn't have the guts, or maybe it's the cowardice to take my own life, but it was that bad that I wanted to die. And I felt like every aspect of my life was killed because of some events that happened. But the one aspect of my life that was untouched was podcasting. And the story then is how podcasting gave me courage to continue on. It challenged me. It gave me something to look forward to. It gave me new goals. And now it's given me business. Podcasting is my whole business. Billy Hoffman said, I have sponsors. What metric do you think is the most important quote when pitching for them? The most important thing to share with sponsors really is influence and relevance, which is not necessarily a measurable thing, but how you communicate it can make it more appealing to sponsors. Because an intelligent sponsor will, and sometimes they need a little bit of convincing to understand this, they'll recognize the value in getting in front of the right audience. For example, advertising dog food at a cat lovers convention, not really the right audience. Okay, you could say, hey, it's pet food, and maybe cat owners also have dogs, so maybe they need to know about this dog food brand. Yeah, you can do that kind of a stretch, but it's not extreme relevance. But if you were to tell a dog food brand, hey, I have a podcast for dog owners or dog breeders or dog enthusiasts or anything about dogs, then you are suddenly much more relevant to them and potentially more profitable than a conference with thousands of attendees who are there for cats. So relevance is extremely important. The other thing that's important is influence. If you can't get your audience to take action, then that means they're not going to buy the product from the sponsor. And the sponsor wants to sponsor your podcast because they want to make money. They want to sell their product. So if you can't get your audience to actually buy their product, then there's no value in your podcast for them. So ways that you can measure that engagement and influence with your audience are your iTunes reviews could be great for that. Like you could show them, hey, look at my iTunes reviews. Look at what my audience says. Look at the difference I'm making in their life. And especially look for those reviews where it communicates further the relevance of your audience and your content to that potential sponsor, because that will encourage them to see your outlet as much more valuable of a place to sponsor and find their ideal customers. Now, aside from that, an actual number to give them would be downloads per episode after about a month. And you can add to that and let them know your total reach in other places. Like to say, and I have this many people following me on Twitter, this many people on my Facebook group or page, this many people on my email list. Those are other helpful numbers. But don't lie and say my total reach is this. I mean, that's not lying, but don't give them only that number. Give them multiple numbers, but let them know your podcast sponsorship will be heard by about this many people. And that's your downloads per episode after about a month. If you give them your downloads per month, that's completely misleading to them, because they could sponsor only one episode in the month and see a tiny fraction of the total number of impressions that go out in that month. They get only a small fraction of it, because those total number of downloads in a month are not only for your most recent episode. Well, that's it for now. If you want to learn how to improve your podcast, go to podcastersociety.com and join the waiting list over there. And I will give you behind the scenes peeks at what is going on inside of the society and more to help you improve your podcast. Nothing about launching, all about improving. And watch for the next episode of the Audacity podcast, which will be about how to get good audio from your podcast guests. That will be episode 304, released on Tuesday, May 9th, 2017. Please connect with me on Twitter and Instagram at the Daniel J. Lewis, and I am Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity podcast. So keep growing your podcast, keep making it amazing, and join me in Podcaster Society or over at theaudacitypodcast.com. Thanks for watching.